Alrighty, it looks like this is going to be everyone for now, so we're going to go ahead and get started here soon. We'll make sure everyone gets CEU forms sent out for you all to get those CEUs for attending today's session. On the call today, we have Suzanne Nienaber from the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission, as well as Cam Prohlman, as well from the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. Their coffee talk today is going to be the Pathways to Play, a place where everyone can play. And we're going to be talking about implementation insights for creating more inclusive playgrounds for you all. So with that, I am going to hand it over to Suzanne, unless there's anything else that I'm missing before we get started.
I think that's it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and click over to a slide deck just momentarily. Thank you all so much for being here today. Again, I'm Suzanne Nienaber. I'm with the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. I'm a principal planner here. We are one of 9 planning commissions, regional planning commissions around the state, and we happen to be focused on the greater Manchester region. So really happy to be here today. Really thrilled to be partnering with New Hampshire RPA to make this happen. And I know that the reason many of you are here today is to hear from our featured speakers. So we will be introducing them momentarily. But I also wanted to make sure we thank other folks who've contributed today. The staff at the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission has been extraordinarily helpful. All of the commissioners who support our work day in and day out, they've been really fantastic in helping us move Pathways to Play along. Also, this work is funded by the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation. So it's a really big with a lot of gratitude that we want to offer them for making this possible for us. I want to talk through our agenda for today. So we're going to actually start out in a moment with an opening poll, and then I'll give maybe like a 5-minute overview of Pathways to Play. Then we'll have some introductory remarks from our panelists, and they've done a great job of kind of preparing some thoughtful perspectives on increasing access to inclusive play spaces. Then we'll have a moderated discussion and Q&A, and I know that there are so many folks on the call who are working on this topic and thinking about this topic every day. So we want it to be interactive. We'll kind of open it up and let you all, of course, put questions in the chat, but there should be time if you want to share your own stories or your own experience for you to join in the conversation too. And then we'll end with some final reflections and a closing poll. And with that, Cam and I'll let Cam Prohlman from our team introduce himself as well. And he's going to do his best to launch a Zoom poll, which we don't have a ton of experience with. So if it doesn't work out, we'll just bypass it. But we figured it could be worth a try.
Thank you, Suzanne. And hi, everybody. My name is Cam Prohlman. I am a senior planner here at the Southern New Hampshire Planning Commission. And yeah, we want to kick things off. We'd like to get a quick snapshot of where you are in your community or organization, where you stand when it comes to inclusive play spaces. So I'm gonna launch this poll, and I hope it works. And so we want to know, are you already on board? Are you just getting started? Are you still learning? Are you running into challenges? So we're asking you to just take a moment to select the option that kind of best describes your current perspective or situation.
So far, it looks like it's working. I'm excited when technology magic happens. All right.
So we'll give it a couple more seconds.
I think we have most of our responses. So do you want to close the poll and we'll share results?
All right. So it looks like about 26% are already on board, already have at least one inclusive play space. 26% are making progress. 42% are in the learning phase, which I know we are in the learning phase, and that's kind of why we're doing this today. And 5% are facing challenges. So um, that's good, and that's why we're doing this. So thank you everybody for taking the time to take this poll, and I'll stop sharing this now.
Thanks so much, Cam. It's great. And thanks for everyone for weighing in. Let's see, I'm going to close out on my side. All right. So with that, I want to dive in quickly to give an orientation to Pathways to Play. Cam and I and us, the folks of us here at SNHPC, we are not experts in this area at all. Like we are planning professionals. I happen to also have a background in public health. So I've always been very interested in the intersection of our built environment and our health outcomes. And when I joined SNHPC a couple of years ago, I was thrilled to see that there was already collaboration happening with the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation to explore the role of recreation spaces in improving the health of our communities. So the goal of the foundation was really looking at preventing childhood obesity, promoting physical activity, and we said, well, we're really curious to think about how we can do that as planners in the SNHPC region. So a couple of our initial strategies for this work were to assess barriers to recreation. We wanted to provide communities with tools to start promoting the recreational facilities that they did have available. And we wanted to kind of go deeper and assist one community with a pilot project. So how we went about this work, and we started this, Cam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you all began this back in 2022. One of the things that the team first did before I arrived was to do a really in-depth survey of community recreation opportunities and basically public perception. What were opportunities? What were barriers? Where were folks taking their kids to play? What were some of the challenges that they encountered? We learned a lot from that survey. So about 250 people responded. It was largely parents and other caretakers. And, there were some things that we couldn't necessarily address from a planning perspective. For example, a major barrier to recreation is people's lack of personal time. And, we can all relate to that, but it was not something that we could necessarily tackle firsthand. But one thing we saw as a really crucial issue that people elevated was like, hey, I just need to have more information, know where the play spaces are, have more information about, like, as a first-time visitor, what resources are there, when is it open, et cetera. And that's something that we felt we could really provide support with. We then expanded on that quantitative data analysis with some community outreach. And this happens to be some photos and artwork from an event we did in Windham. This was during the Easter egg hunt. It was supposed to be outdoors, but we had a concentrated group indoors because it was a rainy day. But that was a fantastic opportunity to have some, one-on-one interaction with kids and their parents, and start to get a little bit more nuanced understanding about their favorite play spaces, what they enjoyed the most about recreation in Windham, and then also look at some of help them imagine some different opportunities, for example, for how they might access recreation facilities through different types of transportation modes. And then, and Cam, I'll give him a lot of credit for this. We did outreach with every single municipality in our region to make sure that we were able to map every single recreational facility. So parks, playgrounds, trails, et cetera. And we also provided additional resources, and we created our very first GIS layer of recreation opportunities in the region. And for each site, provided additional information. For example, what are the hours of operation? What are the accessibility issues in terms of parking, in terms of restroom availability? So that was a really good kind of baseline understanding of what we are working with in the SNHPC region. Then in terms of our pilot project, and this was so fun to address. So we did a call for projects, and we ended up selecting the town of New Boston to work with. And we basically worked with Mike Sindoni, he's in the picture at the bottom, with the recreation department there. He assembled a really amazing work group, brought together folks from the PTA, from the library, from the rail trail, from the Conservation Commission and Rec Commission. And we did a lot of thinking about opportunities for that town. Now, there was a long-term vision of of thinking about how to make their town playground much more accessible. So it has pea stone. There were, not everybody was able to play or like even like push a stroller onto that site very easily. So they really wanted to think about the kind of long-term improvements for a more inclusive playground. And in fact, we did a really fantastic field trip. We brought everybody on the New Boston recreation bus over to the town of Windham, and we visited Griffin Park. Cheryl Haas was there, the recreation director, and she really talked us through a lot of the implementation play by play for how they made that space happen. And it was an amazing learning experience. And we decided that, this was something we really wanted to this is a conversation we wanted to keep having and share more broadly, because especially for folks who are, just learning about accessible playground surfacing, don't have background in implementation, it can be a little bit intimidating and it's hard to know where to begin. So that was our initial idea for thinking through doing a statewide event where we could bring folks together. And we're really glad NHRPA was on board with doing that as well. So let me go ahead and advance. So before I move on to our featured speakers, which you're all here for, I would be remiss if I didn't highlight some of the new resources that we have available through Pathways to Play. So we updated our website to put kind of a lot more of our findings and learnings and resources in one place. Cam is going to share around a link in the chat. This is a bit.ly abbreviated link, so let us know if you have any trouble accessing that, and we can put the longer, like completely unmemorable story map link in the chat. But some of the things that we wanted to highlight, and this will be helpful no matter where you are, even if you're nowhere near Southern New Hampshire. We have a fact sheet where we did a lot of research on kind of health impacts and community impacts of parks. So it's a good advocacy tool with links for further reading. We took all of our favorite community outreach activities and distilled them into downloadable activity guides that kind of give you a play-by-play, materials needed, and even some additional resources to download, so you can start envisioning how to, do a scavenger hunt in your community, or do a fun interactive voting exercise about how to access play spaces. And we also have a sample community recreation survey, and this was kind of a baseline that we worked with when we worked with the town of New Boston on their local outreach. And so that's something that anybody can use and start to build from. And then another thing that's just like I find very inspirational is just exploring project examples and great activity that's happening. These are very much focused on our region, but might be of interest to you all. But as we talked about the importance of recreation accessibility, we wanted to think a little bit more broadly, and not just about design components, but other aspects as well. So we have stories from the Friends of Piscataquag River Park. We were kind of considering the importance of stewardship, bringing community members together in terms of doing cleanup and making sure places feel really safe and appealing to a broad cross-section of the community. We highlighted the Cedar Swamp All Persons Trail, which is an amazing project in Manchester that's thinking about accessibility and inclusivity in a variety of ways, including bringing folks with mobility issues into nature, but also thinking through language ability and how folks interact with and approach outdoor trails. And then also we wanted to highlight the Manchester Transit Authority's seasonal service, because I think it's really important for us to keep in mind that not everybody has a personal vehicle they can use to access recreation. So the more we can expand opportunities for folks to, take transit, to be able to walk or bike or roll to the recreation facilities in their community, the more we'll be supporting health and community well-being in a lot of ways. So with that, Cam, you can probably tell me, first I'll highlight that if you do want to reach out to Cam and I, our contact information is here. We will be recording this, and I think we can work with NHRPA to get the participation list. So we'll share the recording and any resources that we all generate together during this conversation. We'll send a follow-up message around. All right. And so with that, let's get to the good stuff. Cam, has Katelyn been able to join the call yet?
I don't see her name on the participant list unless she's on an iPhone.
Okay. Katelyn, we were really excited to have Katelyn, our state representative, Katelyn Kuttab, join us, and we're hoping that she will be able to make it. There's obviously a lot going on in the legislature right now, so she was on board, a week ago, but things might have changed. If she's able to jump in, we'll at any time we'll maybe let her jump in and kind of share her perspective. She is the prime sponsor of House Bill 467, so we were really hopeful that she might be able to kind of give us a little bit of that origin story. And so if she is able to join in, we might kind of change the order of speakers at any time. But with that in mind, I might ask Janet, if you're ready, for you to kind of jump in as our next speaker. So let me go ahead and do a quick intro. We'll skip ahead a slide or two. I'm going to intro Janet. So Janet Horvath is the first New Hampshire Land and Water Conservation Fund compliance specialist with New Hampshire State Parks and Recreation. She provides guidance to municipalities and state agencies on stewardship and compliance at over 500 LWCF properties statewide. She's worked in recreation for over 25 years in a variety of roles, including recreation director for the town of Nottingham and recreation and enterprise manager for the city of Manchester. And Janet was also previously certified as a playground safety inspector. So she has a lot of great perspective to offer us. And Janet, I forgot to give you a shout out earlier. You've been part of our Pathways to Play stakeholder group, kind of guiding this work since the beginning. So thank you so much for everything you've done to make this happen. And I'm going to click slides for you. So feel free to direct me and as you're ready.
Sure. So as Suzanne said, I have been working for the last year as the compliance specialist for the Land Water Conservation Fund. And I've traveled to many sites across the state, some of which have implemented HB 467 in their playgrounds and addressing their playgrounds surfacing. So I took a little just the approach that I wanted to kind of show you how it's being implemented in a couple different areas. And so I put together a slideshow, and we can go to the first one, Suzanne.
Yep.
And we are at Griffin Park in Windham. They did solid poured in place across the entire playground. And, obviously the approach to the playground itself is brick, but the entire playground all the way around is all poured in place, which is typically what you would think you have to do in order to meet the standards of HB 467. That's the typical thought process. And they did that in Griffin Park. And here is the Golden Brook School, also in Windham. Again, entirely poured in place across the entire surfacing area, which meets all the critical fall requirements for the playground surfacing. And again, the gold standard, if you will, and what most municipalities think in terms of a hard surfacing. We can go to the next slide. And you will see.
Apologies if it's on a little delay.
It's okay. This is Pine Island Park in Manchester, and this is a combination of poured in place and certified playground chips. So the requirements of the bill say that at least the approaches to the playground accessories or the structures needs to be a hard surface. So in this case, the poured in place was done around the approaches, and then playground chips were used in the rest of the area. You'll also see it at Wolf Park, which is the next location.
Coming.
Wolf Park here, you'll see the approaches are all solid surfacing, and then certified playground chips. You can see the caution tape is still there from when this was before they even opened. And the same thing at Patricia T. Russell Park in Keene. They also took a blended approach. They've got all of the poured in place leads to the structures, but there is a areas of that are certified playground chips as well. And that is one of the coolest playground structures I've been on. I went up in it and it was wicked cool.
That's super cool looking.
This is something that, at least with many of the NHRPA members, you've heard about this. It is a rubber matting that goes over top of playground chips. And they're individual pieces of rubber matting, and then they are zip tied together. One of the things that I've found is that it very much depends on how much money you have to start, how much money you can access through grants or fundraising, and also how your maintenance crew and how much ability you have to maintain your playground. So all of that balances out together, and you kind of come up with the best scenario for your town. I know that some people have said, can you go back to the Piermont one?
Oh, sorry about that. I was trying to anticipate.
As you can see, there's a large surfacing here, and it's all done with the rubber matting. And I know that I've had people say to me, yes, but that's going to be a maintenance nightmare. I wouldn't necessarily say that in terms of, it depends on how their town is set up and how much money they had. This was an LWCF project, so they had some cash on hand from the town, and they leveraged a LWCF grant to finish off this playground. It certainly will have some maintenance, but again, if their town has the maintenance staff or the recreation staff to be able to do this, that's where they went to. It's certainly something that we're going to keep an eye on, so that we have an idea how long this type of surfacing will go for, as well as all of them. The poured in place has drawbacks just as much as this particular surfacing has drawbacks as well. So we're going to keep an eye on it. Now we can go to, and this is up at Gorham Town Common in Gorham. This is actually bonded rubber. It looks like certified playground chips, but it is actually shaved rubber, and it is bound together by urethane. And so it is partially bonded rubber and partially certified playground chips, all of which meets the critical fall height as well. And there are, again, like I have said, there are pros and cons to all of these. This is less expensive in most cases. It's good in the northern areas because it's a single pour system. In other words, it just, you pour it all down together in one pour. And I did talk to the representative and asked him, what if there's a hole in it? What happens? You can mix up some of the rubber and the urethane and just patch it, and it doesn't take a huge skill level. So again, this is seen in New Hampshire, and you can certainly go visit it. I hadn't ever seen it, but I had seen the material, but hadn't seen it installed anywhere. So again, happening in New Hampshire. And then the last slide that I have is turf on all the approaches to the certified playground chips. This is not a municipal site. This slide came from the representative who sells this, and it's at Stratford County Head Start in Dover. Again, another choice that you could look at in terms of meeting the requirements. All of these meet the critical requirements for playground surfacing and appear to meet the standard that's prescribed in HB 467. Again, HB 467 only says that it needs to be a solid surfacing, and there isn't really a much more beyond that. So I'm just, those are the things that I'm seeing on surfacing. And we will keep an eye. Most of them have been installed in the last year or two. The only ones that are LWCF sites are Piermont and Gorham. But again, we'll be keeping an eye on, and I think Pine Island Park in Manchester is an LWCF site as well. Keeping an eye on them just to see how resistant they are, how resilient they are, and making sure that I think anything that can be done to improve accessibility for anybody. And I'm not just talking wheelchairs. There are a lot of people who have walking issues. So it runs the gamut. Not sure if anybody has any questions at all.
Yeah. So if I don't know, if I would encourage everyone to go ahead and drop questions in the chat for now. I think we might, if there's any pressing questions, feel free to raise your hand and we can squeeze one in right now. And Cam is going to be he's going to be able to see everybody and let us know. But also, otherwise, feel free to, as you're listening to these kind of opening remarks, drop questions in the chat and we'll have a broader conversation at the end. And Janet, thank you so much for kind of coming in cold. I know we had a plan for Representative Kuttab to get you really set up for that. And I know that Cam did pop in the link to HB 467. So if anybody wants to read the exact language, that's handy for you right now. I really appreciate getting the visualization of all of the different types of approaches that different communities are using. And I think that was a really reassuring part to me, that different municipalities are finding ways to implement this in a manner that's effective for them.
So in the chat, I can see that Emily or M asked if you need a pathway to each type of element. And the answer is yes, you need solid surfacing leading up to every element. So that you can see those types of, that type in the Patricia T. Russell, where they did it just up to the element and around the element. And our playgrounds in existence before the bill passed required to meet these new regulations. It is my understanding that they are not. It's anything that is built after January of 2024, I believe. And but I would also tell you that if you are able to increase your accessibility on your playground in any way, it's just going to benefit your community and anybody else that comes. I will also tell you one thing that I have seen as a compliance inspector across the state is the approaches to the playgrounds as well as approaches to any element that's in a park. If you have a playground, if you have a parking lot and that leads to a step, and you have to step up in order to get to the pathway, there is no way that you're going to be able to have people in wheelchairs being able to get there. So take a look at every single element that's on your playground or in your park and see if you could get there. If you were not able to walk in a normal, regular fashion, if you have any issue with trying in your mobility, would you be able to get to where you want to go to? A perfect example was one where they had built a new tennis court, and there's like a 6-inch step between the walkway up to the tennis court.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just, that means that anybody, I know many people that in my time that I have been working in recreation who play tennis in a wheelchair. And we actually had some tennis players from Northeast Passage come to Manchester Parks, and I had to make sure that they were going to be able to get, actually it was pickleball, make sure they were going to be able to get onto the pickleball court. I went to the court to make sure that they could get onto the court. So those are some things that it doesn't seem, it's a long ways away from the playground, or there. Just take a look at how you are getting from the parking lot to the playground.
All right, Janet, thank you so much. I really appreciate your insights, and we'll have more conversation after our remaining speakers. So Cam, just feel free to give a shout if Katelyn has joined at any point. And then I'm now going to introduce our next speaker, and we are so pleased to have with us today Louis Esposito. Louis is the executive director of ABLE New Hampshire, and he has lived experience supporting a loved one navigating neurological differences. He's been serving people with disabilities professionally for over a decade in the fields of special education, supported employment, and community integration. Louis is a doctoral candidate at Southern New Hampshire University, where his research emphasizes the critical role of inclusive educational practices for supporting students with disabilities. So we're so thrilled to have Louis here today, and to be able to hear his perspective. He's really going to help us broaden the framework a little bit, beyond mobility, to think about many different aspects of inclusion.
Thank you, Suzanne. That's a really great introduction. It's always interesting to hear people introduce me, and I've never had anything like that before, so thank you. But my name is Louis. I'm the executive director here at ABLE New Hampshire, which stands for Advocates Building Lasting Equality New Hampshire. A little bit about our organization. You can see a QR code where you could get a link to the website and check out some of the stuff that we're doing. But we are an organization that promotes full inclusion for people with disabilities throughout our state and our country. Our key initiatives are housing, mental health with the dual diagnosis between intellectual and developmental disabilities and mental health disabilities, transportation access, oral health care, civic engagement, and supportive education. So we do quite a bit. In my personal life, I am a doctoral candidate. Hopefully by next week, I'll be something a little bit different. But first and foremost, my most important job is a father. I have two young children who are age 9 and age 5, and other loved ones in my family who are neurodivergent. And I know when we're talking about accessibility, and wheelchair users are very important. There's a whole wide range of disabilities that are very important to think about. So one of the things I really, we just heard a really good presentation about, what we can do and how we're doing it. But I guess I really want to go into the why we're doing it. And first and foremost, language matters. Being labeled as someone that is in special education or having, differences could be really, it could draw a lot of stigma to a child and a loved one. I know you mentioned someone accessing the pickleball court. But I was also thinking along the lines of if a mother or a father was a wheelchair user, being able to access the playground with their kids is also just as important too, right? Having those moments. But oftentimes students, they described these feelings as other or, different than other children. And that's, over a period of time, this is what my doctoral research is showing is all about, is just the language that we use and how it creates that identity as we move on. And it makes you feel that your disability, that there's something wrong with it. But disability is just part of human life. It's part of it's part of diversity. And, questions that students are often faced and adults are often faced is, am I normal? What is the definition of normal, right? Why can't I play with other kids? Why won't other kids play with me? And what does that mean about me? So these are the big questions that I often think about. And on the playground, this matters huge. No one wants to feel left out, and these feelings resonate over time, and they grow larger as the kids become older. So first and foremost, what is inclusion? And I know we hear the term, and if you're in the special education world and you're in schools, you hear the term least restrictive environment. Really, what we should be doing is focusing on what's the most inclusive environment. And it's belonging and not just being allowed in space. It's participating in that is meaningful, not just alongside, but you're actually fully participating. And also making sure that environments are supporting and our policies are assuming, the full range of human diversity. And at a playground, that is very important. The playground is where a lot of rich and meaningful learning and connection happens with children. And play is critical to development. It's really important to understand that. Play supports cognitive and social and emotional development. It's very important for children as they're getting older. And it's a natural form of social interaction and encourages communication. This is really important, especially at lower ages. I'm thinking of my daughter right now, who's 5, and how important play is for her. It's not just only going to be shaped, at school and at home, but it's also going to be shaped by the play environments that they attend. How often do I go to playgrounds with my children and just see them meet a brand new friend, and they are the best buds they possibly can be, and they might not ever see each other again, but they do have those moments. And supportive play means it's an enriching, it's inclusive, and experiences for all children. And just a personal anecdote. I ask my children every day when they get home from school, how was your day? What did you learn? And I hear crickets. I hear nothing. But when I'm asking my children, what'd you do on the playground? Then everything kind of opens up. My daughter has, it seems like, a whole underground market of black tar concrete slabs that they call coal. And they exchange them and hide them from the older students. And, it's a whole thing that they do. And my son, him and his friends, they invent games, Minecraft tag. He's getting a little bit older and his play is shifting, but, just watching him grow up and hearing all the different things that he does on the playground, those are the things that he wants to tell me during the day. And recess and just play in general, it's linked to a lot of decrease in inappropriate behaviors at school and at home. It helps improve self-regulation, and it boosts language development and creativity, especially during unstructured play times. And children with disabilities especially need these opportunities the most. And oftentimes children with disabilities are in very structured environments, right? And you're thinking about their therapies, their appointments, and the structure of school itself. It's exceptionally structured. So having that time to free play and play with your peers is just so important to development and just growing. And outdoor play is essential for that. Making sure, obviously, there's tons of health benefits, but just making sure that that students with disabilities and kids with disabilities are getting all those opportunities. Next slide. And specifically, I wanted to talk about challenges neurodivergent kids face on playgrounds, and these are my children. And oftentimes, my son or my daughter might go into a playground, and it's not always the physical barriers that affect them. It's the too much noise. It's light. It's movement of other kids could be really overwhelming for them. Sometimes. My children, they have a hard time joining in with others. Both of my children experience sensory processing disabilities, and sometimes they could get overstimulated and run different risks when they're playing with kids. They might act in different ways that a lot of other children do. And it's very important that we also create environments that are keeping them in mind. And it's also important to realize that some playgrounds don't always feel safe to these children. So it's really important that we have, and I was looking at a lot of those structures, a lot of locations where students could feel safe and relaxed and just have their moments where they get to experience the play that they want to play. And I think it's also important to realize too, it's a lot of disabilities are developmental. So a 7 or 8 year old that has a developmental disability might not be experiencing play at the same level that an 8 or 9 year old peer might be experiencing. And development's all over the place, right? So we got to keep that in mind as we go. Children with language impairments often engage in less conversation and fewer interactions. So providing opportunities for them to engage. children with ADHD tend to have difficulty with social playing and interrupting social cues. So having opportunities for them to jump into different plays and kind of jump in and out. And we can jump to the next slide. So I just want to go over just briefly just some of the different types of play that could be beneficial when we're thinking about building playgrounds. Risky play. I love the thought of risky play. It is something that I watch my children do all the time. It's jumping up on those monkey bars and having that safe landing. It allows kids to have that risk of harm, but also feel safe. It's letting them take those jumps, right? That are so important in life that everyone has to take risks. Free play. It's allowing, children to be able to have play that doesn't have any rules. It's undefined. There's no boundaries to it. I'm just thinking of how many rules and how many, how much structure are in children's days when, I don't know how many of you all, last time you all were in an elementary school classroom, but just imagine you wake up, you go to school, you got to be told to put this on, you have to have your breakfast given to you at certain times, you got to catch the bus, and then you're sitting in the classroom, for a long period of time, holding it all in, and recess is that one moment where everything just kind of opens up. And you get to enjoy that play and everything's free, right? Also quiet zones on the other end of the spectrum. Some kids that's a lot it's a lot of demands on a kid, and being able to have some privacy to go alone, but also not feel separate from others is very important. So having areas where someone could take some space when they need it, or be able to get a little bit further away without having the sights and the sounds and the sun beaming on you, that you can kind of just decompress from the day you're having or the play you just had. That was always really big with my son. He would get overstimulated and would need a kind of a location just to quiet down. Think, sandboxes, and other places where you could just have that solo time. Sensory play. Now, these are all the things that, when I was looking at the slides previously, what are the different components of sensory play? Tactile, auditory. I love seeing the various musical instruments with the chimes and the gongs. Visual, things that are bright, dull, all over the place. We have your vestibular system, which swings and slides and anything that just spins. Those are all self-regulating tools for a lot of children. Imaginative play. Giving students an opportunity to just create on their own, whether or not it's just a box of old costumes that somebody might want to utilize and just play dress up, or just create something. I know my children, they have a little, they call it the woods next to their playground, where I walked back there a couple weeks ago, and they have all these different play structures with teepees and forts and pirate ships. And, my daughter was explaining to me, and, that was all just created just with a set of sticks and woods and, teacher supervision, and to allow them to go out there. And then finally, parallel play. Especially with developmental disabilities, that might be where their age is at that moment. So being able to play alongside others, so you're not feeling excluded, so you have those opportunities to jump in. So I wouldn't necessarily say I'm an expert in these type of play activities, but I do strongly recommend, especially if you're looking at different play within a school system, utilize the resources that you have. Your occupational therapists at your school are wealth of knowledge, and there's tons of occupational therapists and that are young parents as well that would want to help and participate and help develop and design these playgrounds. Utilize them. So I could talk for a little bit longer, but I'm gonna open it up to questions or go on to the next one. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that, Lewis. Really fantastic presentation. A lot of great food for thought. As I was looking at all the types of play, I was thinking about how much adults need some of that too, and we're in overly structured environments.
Yeah, I'm literally playing with my fidget toy. I have guitars on the wall, but play develops, and I think it's also important to note a lot of these structures and a lot of these designs, they don't just support students with disabilities. It really supports all students. It's part of the universal design model, right?
Absolutely.
Where a lot of students would benefit from these type of environments.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Lewis. And we'll have more time for discussion in just a moment, but I'm really pleased to introduce our final speaker for today, Michele Sheppard. Thank you so much for being here. Very busy lady. Michele is the president and CEO of the Granite YMCA. She has over 30 years of experience working across the YMCA network, playing key roles at YMCA facilities in Pennsylvania, New York, and New Hampshire. Michele is a very strong proponent of health equity initiatives and is involved with collaborative efforts to improve health and well-being for communities across the state. So Michele, thank you so much for being with us today. And I know you have a few images that you shared, so feel free to tell me when to click, whatever you'd like.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for joining today, and to my co-presenters, fantastic information I'm learning from you, and I look forward to further conversations. So the Granite YMCA is, we're not the only Y in the state of New Hampshire, but we are one of 4 physical branch operations. And within our portfolio, we have 7 branches and 2 overnight camps and then 6 day camps. And those structures and facilities house anything from tennis courts to climbing gyms, gymnastics facilities, wellness facilities, pools with lifts and accessibility, outdoor playgrounds, ninja courses, you name it, you can find it probably within our one YMCA. And we serve ages from 6 weeks into 99 plus 100 years of age. So we're the gamut of service, and fundamentally we are a health supporting and education organization we try to make affordability and access to all. Now that access to all is a very dangerous claim to make out there, because when you see some of our facilities, if you've been a member or walk through any of our YMCA facilities or other peers, you'll see that there are limitations to what we have to make it for all. And so my point of view here today is to kind of share, as an organization the size we are, and we are a 501c3, so our funding comes from membership dues. And of our membership right now, 13,000 of our 20,000 members receive some type of financial assistance that we subsidize every year. And then we also are engaged with other supporting agencies to help us make sure that people can afford to be there, but also enjoy our spaces. When I was talking to Suzanne and getting to know her through one of the other affiliations we have, we were chatting about our work in trying to create spaces. And what she just showed right now is our newest playground that actually does, even though it doesn't look like it because I snapped this picture this weekend, have an HB, let me get my numbers right here, 467 surface. This was a new installation done at our Concord preschool in the firehouse in Concord on Warren Street, behind the State Street YMCA, which is the 6th oldest YMCA in the country. And we have a lot of facilities, the oldest being about 110, 111 years of age, all the way to our newest facility, which is 40 years of age. So we're not necessarily in the scope of these spaces that are meeting some of the newer and more lovely presences, or modern presences, because we're constantly trying to navigate our current facilities and keep them up to date. And as we renovate, we make the changes. This playground is a firehouse to align with the old firehouse. It has, and it does not show on here, we have some other play areas and surfaces that are suitable for subtype of mobility riding, as well as walking and moving. And then we have some underneath of it there you can't really see. There's some other modalities that doesn't require anyone to be able to climb. They can do sensory type exercises as well as pretend play. And when we go through the processes every year of evaluating our capital assets, our outdoor structures and indoor structures are on this 30-year map of how we're going to invest into our organization. Much of it is about trying to renovate and update and bring into modern compliance, but also more about how we're going to be more inclusive and accessible to our population. YMCA is most focused, think of us about our wellness centers and our pools. And so in those spaces, it's been more targeted towards the adults about accessibility. We are licensed childcare, and every day in our program's school year, we have about 1,500 children in one of our enrolled childcare spaces, whether it's on a school site such as Golden Brook, which we love having our kids out on that playground, or if it's in one of our locations here is our early learning center, and sometimes our school age kiddos will come out when the littles aren't out and play, and they'll make use of some of the space, but this is targeted for ages toddler through age 6. Or they're out in a camp fields and playing there, but with restrictions. And so across the course of our organization's strategic planning funding and our partnerships and our fundraising, we are considering how we update spaces to make them more appealing. If you can go to the next slide for me, Suzanne, please. This is one of the swings we've installed and have across our association in various locations that is available for kiddos that need a little bit more of a support system when they're swinging. Again, I'll tell you that we have multiples of these swings available that also can seat adults, but we don't have them necessarily on the right surfaces for full inclusivity. And so we have to make modifications there. And we're constantly looking and exploring how we do that. We meet the compliance for fall depth and things of that sort with chips. But our story is that we don't necessarily have those lovely port surfaces yet in because it is a financial barrier for us. And if you go to the next slide, I can give you a little bit of history about this one. This was our first effort at a new playground installation in our camp in Goffstown, which is also a shared community resource that when we're not in a program of licensed daycare, our community members can come drive into our parking lot, and we actually now have pulled down space in our camp, parking spaces for folks with limitations to come and play. This was, when I first went to this facility, a 1950s metal playground with just a hard packed sand surface. Now, we have renovated with a Kaboom grant in 2012. The structure on the right was the very first effort. And behind that structure, there's also some other areas where we have a little bit more accessibility and roll-in ramps and things of that sort. But the most recent facility piece we were able to install is on the left, and it's a Play As We Go, which has the ramp surface comes off of a pad that we installed, and we've modified some of the surface to be able to have folks who are wheelchair users or have a limitation through walking with walkers and things of that sort of all ages to be able to go and to sit in a spinning environment and play. What we've been trying to do across the time frame of all of the multiple playground spaces, which we have a total of 8 unique playground spaces that we have to renovate or update or maintain every year for safety, we've been trying to add spaces and then change surfaces as we go. And one of the biggest things I'll tell you that we experience as a YMCA with a large footprint and a vast amount of facilities is a limitation of funding. We don't have access to tax dollars. We very rarely have any access to national or federal grants for play, because most of the time it's spent on trying to finance the child care spaces themselves, the learning environment indoor and those spaces. We also have worked really hard to give consideration to the partners who help advise us when we do make selections and work with donors for raising the funds for it. We have a inclusivity committee that is in partnership with the University of New Hampshire Recreation Department and some funding they received that is helping us to do audits across our facilities to think about what inclusive access for physical play and all the other levels of play that Lewis just so lovely shared, so that kids and adults and family members can enjoy the environment holistically together and know that it's a safe environment and a more appealing environment versus, oh, well, I can't get there with my stroller for my little ones. My husband has to go down and be able to put them on the swing sets or to the other play areas, or, oh, the grandmother's coming along and she's in a wheelchair and she really would like to be able to enjoy the playground environment, but there's not access there. So in our scope of accessibility, it is having people come through that are living these experiences, that sit on our committees and boards, that give us feedback. We do this not only for our playground areas, we do this for our pool environments, indoors and outdoors, and we do this for our trails and our waterfronts and our camps. And it's a step-by-step process as far as first understanding what our concerns are and what our needs are, and then we have to figure out a way to fundraise it and develop it and do it in piecemeal, which is not always the best way to approach it. But I will say that as much as I'm coveting the beautiful playgrounds that Janet showed and the work that's been done across the municipalities and schools, I'm glad those spaces exist, and they give those of us that are trying to bring our spaces up to par the kind of the help and the visual of what we might want to make changes for as we're working on our plans and master plans. And so if you're from your organization standpoint and your role, if you are in a community where you have another nonprofit that has these spaces that is looking to make these improvements, consider thinking together about how that can be done, how to leverage opportunities for funding, how to leverage resources and sharing of ideas, and what maybe one area or another organization focuses on, another that might be abutting or close by can also enhance for another group and particular population. Because when we can do this together with a focus on making sure that we're all targeting an opportunity for just better spaces for folks to be healthy, to be outdoors, to experience the mental well-being that comes along with the physical well-being and just the socialization and connectedness, then we're all going to win about the improvement of the state's health, which is the play with purpose here, is that we all don't forget how to play, but we have places and spaces we can play. So I love the idea, all the things that have been shared here. And as an organization that's trying to do our best this way, this is just an example of some of the efforts we're taking, and we will continue, and we promise for our community to do. The other thing I'll just highlight that is beyond the fact that we are an organization that provides financial assistance for participation, when we're not in scheduled programming, we make sure that our resources are available and the community knows about it in the surrounding region. And so to giving access to our pool in the summertime, which has a wonderful accessible play area that's non swimming required, to having our playground spaces when camp's not in session, letting folks know that they can go on, or even to our pickleball courts or our trails. These are the types of partnerships we're really proud to be part of, and look forward to maybe some collaboration with some of you folks in the future.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michele. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. I think we have been through all of our deck. But really, thank you for those remarks. That really, it's good to have a reality check, right? That sometimes you have to do things incrementally. Sometimes, cost is a real concern for many communities. And I think that that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have this conversation today, to bring different experts to the table, to talk about ways for, different groups to work together and make this happen, and talk about some pragmatic limitations too that folks are experiencing. So with that, Cam, if we can go ahead and spotlight all of our speakers, and I just want to encourage anybody who has questions to go ahead and put those in the chat and or raise your hand. I know that I believe we have a note from Kendra on the call. Actually, Kendra, if you're comfortable sharing, I know that you and I have had a conversation before. If you wanted to unmute yourself, it'd be great to hear from you about some of the work you're doing, if you want to share that with everyone here.
Okay. Hi, everybody. And I see some hand raised too, so I won't take too long. I am the executive director for the Special Needs Support Center. We work in the Upper Valley, but we do have a grant from the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation to work with any organization in New Hampshire who's looking to create a more inclusive play space. We do this work for free. So I'm going to say that again. I'm not going to come and ask you for some money. So we can come, we can do an audit of your space. We can consult with you. We can kind of work through some issues. If you're like, okay, this is how much money we have. How do we make the most inclusive play space possible? So this is some work that we do both in New Hampshire and Vermont. So I put my email in the chat. Feel free to contact me if that's something you're interested in. Thanks, Jen.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Kendra. I think, and in terms of your free support, is that for municipalities, nonprofits, anyone?
Yes. Anyone, the play space is the most important thing. We're looking for inclusion. It doesn't matter who's the one in charge.
Okay, fantastic. That is, thank you so much for sharing that resource. That's part of the reason why we brought everyone together today. We're like, we want to put the word out. We want to, have everybody pitch in with their ideas and resources. And I do see a hand raised. I believe that's Bodhi. Bodhi, would you like to go ahead and I'm going to have to press a button, and I think you're unmuted now. Fantastic. Go ahead.
So the first one and the other one that we just did, the playgrounds, I helped get that law passed so that they had to have the things, but it's only a start, because I saw a lot of the playgrounds, they were just a little bit of it, and I couldn't go on to the play structures, or some even most of it was still wood chips.
So Bodhi, you actually provided some of the testimony to pass that bill. That's fantastic. What was that experience like for you?
It was kind of scary.
Yeah, you had to be really brave. Well, I think we are all so very appreciative of everything you've done. And thank you so much for joining us today. Thanks so much, Bodhi.
Yeah.
If I could I'm Bodhi's mom.
Hi, Bodhi's mom. Come on in.
And just to clarify, I'm Dale Janae, and I'm here in a personal capacity, but on my work laptop. So yeah, something we were noticing is that this law is a great step, but to really kind of to echo what Lewis was saying, to really belong in these spaces, just being allowed onto them is not enough. So as we're looking at some of those photos, like I could just see Bodhi's face getting kind of angry because yeah, he could go up to the slide or he could go up to the structure, but it looked like there was only one that was actually built inclusively. So I'm hoping that like as towns are celebrating their progress, they're not calling these inclusive playgrounds because they're not. They're more accessible, and they're legally compliant. But they're not inclusive, and we need to set the bar higher for our kids. And then I also wanted to just say, Lewis, I think it was you again that said like use your resources, and you mentioned like OTs and PTs. Yes, 100%. But who else do we have at schools? We've got the kids. We need to get the kids out there designing and telling the adults who are buying the equipment, what do they want on their playgrounds? So we're here in Concord, and Bodhi had an amazing vice principal a couple years ago who realized there was no inclusive equipment, nothing, and there's wood chips, and she wanted to get an accessible swing. And Bodhi looked at one of those big green adaptive swings. Yes, they're adaptive, and so that's great. But he said, no, I don't want a swing out on the playground that I would have to be transferred to, that sets me apart from the other kids. And so the two of them went in search of a inclusive swing that they installed, and it's more expensive, but there's a ramp right up to it. It's more like that, picture that we just recently saw where there's a ramp from the YMCA. There's a ramp up to it. He can go on it with 3 or 4 friends. So it is really important that us as adults aren't just saying, oh, it's adaptive equipment, it's fine. Talk to the kids. Nothing about us without us. And in this case, it's not just people with disabilities, it's kids with disabilities need to be included in these designs and brainstorming, and hopefully new laws that take this a little bit further so that we don't stop at access. We need to actually shoot for inclusion.
Thank you so much. Those are such fantastic remarks. Really appreciate that from you both. Thank you. And agreed, like I think with the HB 467, we really are talking about kind of the minimum standard that we all should be aiming for, and get thinking much bigger as very, very welcome. And it looks like you got a lot of thumbs up and kind of positive responses. And just because something meets ADA standards or meets the terms of HB 467 doesn't make it inclusive. So, let's keep building. I see Lewis has some things to say too.
Yeah, I think Bodhi, you brought this to my attention too. But what happens during the winter months, right? And we're talking about wood chips, but and accessibility. But Bodhi, could I ask you a question? Do you mind? Like, when you're on the school playground, what do you do during the wintertime?
Not a lot. I mean, sometimes I get my sled, but if I can find anyone that's willing to pull me on it. But yeah.
So
I can't really do anything just on the pavement because there really isn't anything there except super high basketball hoops.
So thank you for sharing that. And I think it's just important to know too, New Hampshire, we have snow on the ground anywhere between October to May sometimes, right? Just keeping that in mind too as we're designing. It's not about just the structures of the playgrounds. It's giving opportunities, all over the place, all over the play space.
Absolutely. And I would love to, throw out this to our other panelists and also to everyone on the call, kind of this notion of creating more inclusive design processes. If anyone has experience, I mean, Michele mentioned her inclusivity committee, and I know Kendra gave a thumbs up to that. But I wonder if there's anybody else who has personal experience with facilitating a really valuable, meaningful design process. And if there's any key stakeholders that you'd recommend that you bring them to the table. We talked about kids, kids with disabilities, anybody else you'd have in mind? I know that I'll just jump in on kind of some of the learnings we have from Pathways to Play. We've found it really valuable to, when we're talking about recreation, make sure that folks from to transit providers who are there. So if you have transit or paratransit services in your community, talking about access, not just in terms of what happens on site, but also how people arrive and what is available to them is just something that I'd suggest. And then just in terms of my own kind of personal background, and I actually lived in New York City for 23 years, which is very different than New Hampshire, and it's a learning curve for me. But one organization in New York that did some really great design process work, and I'll share the link in any follow-up. The Trust for Public Land they did a lot of work on schoolyards to playgrounds initiatives that did very inclusive outreach with communities to think through, like, how, you probably all can imagine like the worst New York City playground, which is just like chain link fence around blacktop, and thinking through how that could not just be, the most miserable experience ever, but become eventually a community resource. And something that they thought about too was bringing seniors in. So schoolyards to playgrounds were frequently reimagining playgrounds, making investments in these play spaces, and then opening them up to the community in the afternoons and on weekends when school was not in session. And also, so they wanted to look at, what are the other folks in the community that need a space to spend time, and especially in a place where there's a deficit of greenery, a deficit of recreation opportunity. This, like, senior communities were actually very heavily tapped in terms of their experience too. And so you'll see that at some of these renovations, you have very active tracks and things like that, but you also have shading. You also have really nice, like, seating, benches, places for picnicking, places for imaginary play, like a little stage or a gazebo that folks can play in. So those are just a couple ideas that come to mind that were kind of inspired by the remarks today.
So Suzanne, there's several comments in the chat that I think that are worth taking a look at. Matt Fry from UNH, he has been a great advocate for inclusivity. And if he wants to speak, where is he?
Please, Matthew. Thank you for keeping an eye on that.
Sure. So I just wanted to say that a lot of our graduates out of the therapeutic recreation program these days are looking to not necessarily work in the more clinical side of the field. They're not looking to go work in a hospital. They're desirous of working in community parks and recreation settings or community settings in general. So one of the things that I think we forget sometimes when we talk about therapeutic recreation specialists is that they're not just clinicians, they're also very well trained in general rec programming. So if your organizations are looking to increase staffing levels and you're ready to make a hire, but you're hoping to increase your inclusion or specialized programming sort of offerings, hiring a CTRS gives you sort of the best of both worlds. It allows you to have somebody to assist with general programming while starting to chip away at issues related to inclusion and disability. So until you then hit like a fully fledged therapeutic recreation or adaptive rec program, in which case you then can hopefully be self-sustaining and well-funded, and then you can hire that next person. But a lot of our grads right now are really good rec programmers, and so I would just encourage folks to not pigeonhole those CTRSs, especially into I don't know, into a too small of a box, because they're awesome rec programmers with additional information and skills. And everything we've talked about today is right in the wheelhouse of anybody who's coming out of school with a therapeutic recreation degree.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I feel like we're all learning about some new resources, so really appreciate that remark, Matthew.
Another comment in the chat is Julia from Pettinelli, and their company did the mats that are in Piermont. I know that I kind of touched on some of the the good parts of the rubber mats, because again, cost effective. And one of the things I like about it is that you could take the mats apart and you could pull it up, put the wood chips underneath. So again, a lot of it has to do with how your maintenance is, how you see your ability to do the maintenance. I don't know if there's anything else that Julia wants to add, but again, they're a resource and they are the ones that did the mats. And then Kendra asked down here, has anyone found a good solution to effectively clear the surface for a wheelchair on an inclusive playground? This is the biggest hurdle we find. So
like would the clear the surface if you have the composite chips?
That's what it sounds like.
I'm sorry, clearing the surface of snow and ice.
No. Oh, okay.
Sorry. Yes. Winter time.
Oh yeah, that's a great open call. If anybody has insights on the accessible surfaces and the winter maintenance.
I think for the most part, they're probably not clearing the playgrounds. That's just my thought. I will also point out, again, I'm the Land Water Conservation Fund compliance specialist, and many of you have LWCF properties in your town, and funding is available through the Land Water Conservation Fund. And even if you don't have LWCF, you are, as a municipality, eligible, and schools are eligible for funding. So check it out. If you already have an LWCF property, it doesn't change anything as far as because LWCF properties need to be kept in recreation use in perpetuity. So that is something for your town to think about if you're looking at a brand new playground in a brand new area. But if you already have an LWCF property, it's a way to get additional funding up to half of the cost of the playground. So check it out.
Thank you so much, Janet. And I think that we're closing on to the last few minutes of this session. So I'm going to ask Cam if he can to launch our final poll. And this is kind of an open-ended kind of crowdsourcing question. So feel free to weigh in if you have some ideas. We would love to just get your final thoughts and in a few words, share any idea, a project, a resource. Could be something you heard about today or something that you are working on in your own community, but something that you find inspiring. So we just want to have a chance to kind of gather ideas from everybody who's on the call today. And while you're taking the time to do that, I just want to reiterate my thanks again to everybody who spent their coffee talk morning with us. This is a really lovely forum, and I really appreciate NHRPA inviting us to be a part of it. I want to again share my thanks with the New Hampshire Children's Health Foundation, who have been instrumental in kind of shaping our thinking as a regional planning organization in terms of what our role can be in supporting, just better access to recreation through all different methods in terms of land use, in terms of transportation, and also in terms of design, so that we can be as inclusive and be providing resources for as many folks as possible. And with that in mind, Cam, I don't know if you're able to, if folks have been able to share some ideas, or if there's anything you'd want to post on the screen to close us out.
We've got 6 responses so far, and some keep trickling in.
Okay, we can give it another.
I'm afraid if I end it, I'll cut some people off.
Oh yeah, good point. We'll give people another 30 seconds to wrap up. I also really want to thank Bodhi and Bodhi's mom and everybody who's been working on this effort in their own capacity for so long. I think that this collective conversation and advocacy and dialogue is so important for us to kind of shape the changes we want to see in our communities. So really loved everybody who was able to contribute during today's call. And, we'll share materials after this event and a recording and, help we'd appreciate your help with continuing to spread the word about, the importance of play, the importance of recreation. We all need some more joy in our lives right now. So thank you so much for being here. And Cam, do you want to go ahead and close out the poll?
I will.
Let's see. I'm not sure how. I can't see it, but maybe you can read it.
Yeah, give me one sec. It's opening in in
Oh,
the
it
new
opens.
tab.
Oh yeah, we're learning. See, Cam and I we're technical wizards. We've had so many technical problems at our office that we stationed ourselves in 2 different places so we wouldn't drop this call. Um, thank you, Patty. Really appreciate your support. Well,
Okay. I'm gonna go through and just read a few of these. So
mhm.
we have one, Exeter, New Hampshire Playground is being completely renovated this spring. It will include poured in-place ADA matting, wood chips, and inclusive elements. And we look forward to this project and increasing accessibility in all of our parks and playgrounds.
Great.
We have the emphasis on accommodating different types of play was a good reminder. This presentation was excellent. School just received town funding to complete a new playground. We're trying to get funding for a communication board on our playground to help make it more inclusive. Any grants that anyone knows of would be wonderful. And they shared their email, which I'll share in the chat. MCR Game Time Playgrounds, we are just one of the only research-based design manufacturers backed by Playcore. We'll share resources. Designated quieter areas that are sensory friendly. The 7 principles of inclusive playground design are tailored by the Center for Outreach, Research, and Education from the original 7 principles of inclusive design created by NC State. The city of Rochester has been budgeting for a replacement of our hydraulic lift chairs at our outdoor pools, hopefully in either fiscal year 26 or 7 budget. Concord is close to breaking ground on a new inclusive playground, first in the city. The idea that inclusivity goes deeper than just being accessible. As a representative and playground designer, it is invaluable to hear these perspectives to ensure the playgrounds we build allow children and parents to enjoy the space. And then lastly, we have asked the playground company design team if they have worked with those who have disabilities to help them in their design process. So thank you everyone so much for sharing these wonderful insights. I am going to share someone's email in the chat here.
All right. Thank you
All
so
right.
much, Cam. And thanks to everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate it. And please enjoy the rest of your day. Try to have some fun. Go play.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Great session. Thank you to all the speakers.
Thanks, David.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good one.